Hello and welcome to Fatigue Risk Management for Employees. I'm your host, Calvin Reeves. In this presentation, you will discover what is fatigue, how to manage your own fatigue, and some scheduling strategies to help people cope with fatigue. Let's begin, shall we? By the end of this presentation, you should be able to identify the causes and consequences of fatigue. You should be able to identify some guidelines and recommendations for duty and rest periods. And you should also have some handle on your own personal fatigue management strategies, which we call active fatigue management. So Module 1, we'll be talking about causes and consequences of fatigue. And let's start things off with a little bit of discussion. Take a moment to write down a few conditions that you feel will make you fatigued at work. This could be things that happen in your life and outside of work. Also, what kind of things you do at work to get fatigued. We have to define our terms, so we'll do that right off the bat. So what is fatigue? It's a state of physical or mental weariness that results in reduced alertness. It's the result of a lack of sleep or a lack of adequate sleep. It's a sleep debt that accumulates until paid off with adequate sleep. There are several types of fatigue out there. Fatigue can be a result of a variety of factors, so the body's natural rhythms, circadian rhythms. We'll be discussing circadian rhythms at length in this presentation. Your work schedule, shift work, can be tougher than normal 9 to 5 work. Your work environment, do you work in a hot area? Do you work in a particularly cold area, a particularly noisy area? And then obviously continuous wakefulness will have you be tired faster. There are 3 different kinds of fatigue. You have acute fatigue, that's just a single night of not getting enough rest. Cumulative fatigue, several continuous nights or days with inadequate amounts of sleep. And then there is chronic fatigue. That is an almost continuous lack of sleep and is a serious medical condition. If you believe you suffer from chronic fatigue, you should see a doctor. To start things off, we're going to be talking about your body clock, also known as circadian rhythms. It's not just because we've had a long day that we're tired and that we go to sleep. Your body clock actually controls feelings of sleepiness, telling your body to go to sleep when it gets dark and to wake up when it's light. Makes sense. It operates on a 24-hour cycle. So light and dark cycle. One reason your body finds it difficult to adjust to night or evening shifts, you're working when your body clock is trying to tell you to sleep. Your body does this in a variety of ways, such as secreting hormones. For example, melatonin, that's the hormone of sleep. Lowering your core temperature, which also makes you sleepy. Your circadian rhythms control other body rhythms as well. When you work at night, you're also fighting against other bodily rhythms, such as digestion. Your body's digestive system slows down when you're normally sleeping, so eating at night forces your body to digest food when it's not ready for it. This is why shift workers are more likely to experience fatigue and gastrointestinal problems. Here we see a clock demonstrating circadian rhythms times the circadian lows and circadian highs. The period between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. is generally a window of circadian low for most people. People go through periods of heightened alertness between 9 and 11 a.m. and 9 and 11 p.m. Also, there is a period after lunch between 3 and 5 where we are sleepy. We call this the siesta period. So there are individual differences to this, of course. The ability to cope with shift work varies from person to person, so it depends on their individual circadian rhythms. That's why people can generally be divided into morning or evening types. Morning people adapt better to early morning hours, but have more trouble coping with night work. Evening types cope more easily with evening and night shifts. They tend to cope better with shift work overall since they generally have less rigid sleep habits and find it easier to sleep later in the day. So what are you? Are you a morning or night person? I know personally I'm definitely a night owl. I can sleep late in the day and find it very difficult to get up and perform at 6 in the morning. Sleep is the crux on which all fatigue rests. So how much sleep do you need? Well, like everything in this, it varies from person to person. But as a general rule of thumb, most people need between 7 and 9 hours per day. When do you sleep? Well, most people tend to fall asleep naturally between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Sleeping outside these times can be more difficult, more broken. There's research out there to suggest that night shifts workers get 1 to 3 hours less sleep per day than day shift workers. In addition to sleeping less, people who work shifts often get sleep of lower quality. It's also important to obtain your sleep in a single block. A 4-hour period of sleep followed by 6 hours of activity followed by another 4 hours of sleep is not as good as a single 8-hour straight block of sleep. If you happen to get a lack of sleep for consecutive nights, you will get what's called a sleep debt. Sleep debt can only be paid by sleep. Usually it takes 1 to 2 nights of sufficient sleep to pay back that debt, depending on how much debt you've acquired. This slide here shows sleep cycles. So when you sleep, you go through 90 to 120 minute cycles. In stage 1 is the transition between consciousness and sleep. You can generally hear and respond to someone in this stage. Stage 2 is light sleep. You are easily awakened, but you're not aware of your surroundings. You spend about half your sleep time in stages 1 and 2. Stages 3 and 4 are deep slumber, and this is a very restorative phase. This is when your body is doing all the repairing. Stage 5 is known as REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, and it's a stage of sleep where you dream. Like I mentioned before, a complete sleep cycle can be between 90 and 120 minutes. A typical sleep will move through the cycle several times a night, but each cycle will vary in length. Whenever you're sleep deprived, your body will try to first catch up on deep sleep, stages 3 and 4, and REM sleep. So for example, if you haven't slept very well for 3 or 4 nights in a row, your body tends to just rush through stages 1 and 2 just to get to the 3 and 4 deep sleep stage. If you're wondering about your own personal sleep cycles, are you a 90-minute or 120-minute sleep cycler? There are apps out there such as Sleep is Android for the Android and Sleep Cycle for iOS. These can also be paired to devices like Fitbit and the Apple Watch to keep better track of your heartbeat, body temperature, and all that during sleep. These will also tell you things like when you're snoring, when you wake up, because sometimes we awaken at night and don't even know it, as well as the quality of sleep that you're getting. Recovery periods. So when schedules are non-standard, long duty days, and or start-end times during circadian low, recovery periods need to be scheduled. Frequent recovery periods are more effective than less frequent, weekly as opposed to monthly. Time zone changes wreak havoc and lead to circadian misalignment, so waking too early, or waking too late, or going to sleep too late. Then also there are individual recovery needs. So if sleep is the enemy of fatigue, continuous wakefulness is its ally. So obviously being awake for a long period of time makes you tired. However, you got to keep in mind that extended periods of performance will make you tired faster. The acute effects of fatigue can be addressed through daily duty limits, and the cumulative effects of fatigue can be mitigated by weekly duty limits. More on these later. Fatigue is sometimes not taken seriously. It is in fact a very hazardous condition. When you're fatigued, your reaction time is slower. You have trouble concentrating or remembering things. You may have difficulty communicating clearly with coworkers. You may fall asleep on a job, and there's a greater risk you'll make a safety-critical mistake. There are particular times of the day when the risks associated with fatigue are higher, so midnight to 6 a.m., especially 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., the low point in the body's circadian rhythm that governs alertness and performance, the beginning and end of shift when handover occurs. Fatigue levels can affect communication during these times. When you work without breaks for a number of hours, the longer you're on the job, the likelier you're to have an accumulated fatigue. And then early shift starts, shifts that start before 6 a.m. In general, we are poor judges of our own fatigue. It's difficult to tell when your fatigue levels have reached a point where it's no longer safe to work. So in Module 2, we'll be going over some guidelines and recommendations, ways that you can mitigate your own fatigue. Window of circadian low operations. So time zones play a major role in windows of circadian lows. Kind of general rule of thumb, 3 or fewer time zones, window of circadian low will still be 0200 to 0600, your home base time. 4 or more time zones, window of circadian low is 0200 through 0600, home base time, but only for the first 48 hours. After that 48 hours, your body will have adjusted to the new time zone, so keep that in mind when scheduling. Off-duty period. Off-duty is a continuous defined period of time which crew members are free from all duties. No paperwork, no talking on the phone to your boss. It is your time to rest. So it's most important to have 8 hours of sleep during this time. Recognize that a wind-down period is needed in addition to the 8 hours, so reading a book, checking your email, stuff like that. There are other considerations for transportation, meals, showering, etc. So therefore, a minimum off-duty period should be 10 hours for a 24-hour period. Then there's also considerations to be made for consecutive duty days. So consecutive duty days can cause cumulative fatigue even with the rest time. The next 2 slides give an example of how you can score your own fatigue. This table here just gives you an example of ways you can score your fatigue. and manage your own fatigue risk management. So one way to evaluate a work schedule is to calculate a fatigue score based on factors such as shift length, days off, and number of night shifts. So for example, 9 to 5, 5 days a week would produce a score of 0. On the other hand, a schedule of 7 12-hour night shifts followed by 7 days off would produce a score of 21, which is considerably high. This graph here just gives you a visual representation of what was discussed in the slide earlier. Special considerations should be made when working during windows of circadian low when it comes to scheduling off-duty periods. Maintaining wakefulness during windows of circadian low causes fatigue to accumulate at a higher rate. You get tired faster. There's a higher potential for reduced performance. So off-duty periods after a window of circadian low duty should be increased to a minimum of 12 hours. Again, crossing time zones can make scheduling off-duty periods much more complicated. So when you spend 48 or more hours and when you are 4 or more time zones away from your home base, recovery should be increased to 48 hours to give your circadian rhythms a chance to readjust to the home base. So monitoring fatigue systems in yourself and in other employees can be a good strategy for maintaining a fatigue-free environment. So identify employees who show signs of fatigue. For example, you can catch someone yawning 3 or more times in 15 minutes, maybe bring it to their attention. A system of reporting also allows the company to take measures when the risk is considered high. So what are some common symptoms of fatigue? Go ahead and take a moment here to write some down. So here are some fatigue proofing strategies. You can have increased monitoring, working in pairs, or double check systems. So increased monitoring can be as simple as informal and frequent conversations with your supervisor or other coworkers. You can also do task rotation or moving critical tasks to daytime. These can all help ensure that safety critical work is not at risk from fatigue. Also, you can move monotonous tasks to the daytime as well. Monotonous tasks can worsen feelings of fatigue as much as those that require intense concentration. Take additional breaks. A break of 10 to 20 minutes is usually enough to improve your performance in the short term. Research has found that performance starts deteriorating after 2 hours on high-demand tasks, so use your break to do something to improve your alertness, like getting some fresh air, some light exercise, having a coffee, drinking some water. Then, of course, there's always napping. So taking a 20-minute nap can improve alertfulness, but don't forget about the sleep inertia effect. Give yourself 10 to 20 minutes to wake up fully before starting to do work. Finally, Module 3 will be going over some elements for active fatigue management, ways that you can take control of your fatigue. First things first, get the sleep you need. Seems pretty obvious, but there are some tricks and some things maybe you're doing wrong that you didn't even know. So you want to set up your bedroom for sleeping. So you want to make the room as dark as possible. Light tells your body to be awake, so blackout curtains, blindfolds, things of that nature. Make sure the temperature is right in your bedroom. They recommend 64 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, a cool body temperature tells your body it's time to sleep. Move distractions to another room, so your bedroom should be for relaxing and sleeping. Things like televisions, computers, even if they're not turned on, just the fact that they're in your room can cause your body to want to be awake. And then make sure you won't be disturbed. So turn your cell phone on airplane mode. Make sure everyone knows that it's time to sleep. This could take a little coordination with the people you share your household with, whether that's your family or roommates. It's also important to develop good sleeping habits. So you can start a regular bedtime routine. So doing little things like brushing your teeth every day in the same order before bedtime can train your body that it's time to sleep. So even during the day, so if you find yourself having to sleep during the day. Has to be a wind down period. It's better to relax a little before trying to sleep. So a little light exercise can sometimes help, although avoid anything strenuous. Be careful what you eat or drink before bed. Your body is programmed to digest food during the day, so it's better not to eat a big meal just before bedtime. A light snack may be okay, but avoid anything with caffeine, such as coffee or energy drinks. Alcohol is not a good idea either because you won't sleep as deeply and don't wake up feeling as refreshed. Try not to toss and turn. If you can't get to sleep, it's sometimes better just to get up and do something relaxing instead of tossing and turning. Try reading or taking a bath or doing some stretching. And if you're going to be having to work different shifts, try to adjust your bedtime gradually. During the day, if you find yourself fatigued, taking a nap, if that's an option, can be an excellent way to manage that fatigue. So naps can supplement sleep, not replace it. So a nap will not take the place of a full good night's sleep. So 10 to 20-minute power naps can improve alertness and communication and mood. If possible, though, try to sleep for an entire sleep cycle, so 90 to 120 minutes, and wake up naturally from the nap. This will have you feeling more refreshed. The time of day that you take a nap doesn't matter, so a nap at noon and a nap at 9 offer the same value. And when waking up from a nap, allow about 5 to 20 minutes for the sleep inertia to pass. Remember that when you wake up from a nap, you may feel groggy and disoriented. This is especially true if you're awakened by an alarm instead of waking up naturally, or if you awaken from a particularly deep stage of sleep. This is called sleep inertia, so make sure you build in time to wake up properly before taking on anything that requires full concentration. And then finally, we're going to talk about screen hygiene. So screen hygiene is a relatively new science. Simply put, our LCD monitors and screens on our phones, our tablets, our computers, even our TVs, put out a slightly blue tinted light. The sky is blue, so this tricks your brain into thinking that it's daytime, and it's time to get up and do stuff. This can interrupt your circadian rhythm. It's a good idea to avoid screens for an hour before sleep. However, sometimes this is not possible, so there are apps out there to help, such as Twilight for phones and tablets and F.Lux for computers. They simulate dusk on your screen, adding a red tint, telling your brain it's time to go to sleep. However, paper books are still some of the best options for winding down, and we're not talking e-readers, actual physical paper books that you go to the store and buy. Another important element in fatigue management is to stay hydrated. Dehydration makes you feel tired, so when your body is low on water, it tries to conserve what you have left. It does this by slowing down your activity in your body. This can make you feel sleepy. Being dehydrated can also make you feel lightheaded or cause headaches. Your working environment can make you dehydrated faster. You should pay particular attention if you work in hot, dry, or air-conditioned environment, or if your job is physically demanding and makes you sweat, or if you're just sweating in the heat. Be careful what you drink or eat, so coffee, tea, soft drinks, alcohol, and salty foods all make you feel thirstier. Kind of as a rule of thumb, adults should get about 64 ounces of water a day. That's 1/2 of a gallon for those of you keeping track. Another strategy for mitigating fatigue is the smart use of caffeine. Now, aviation, we run on coffee, we run on caffeine. We are a caffeine culture. Caffeine is the most widely used drugs in our society. It is a stimulant. Many people use caffeine and strong coffee or tea to get their day started and fight off feelings of fatigue as the day wears on. But you got to make strategic use of caffeine. So if you drink multiple cups of coffee throughout the day, or if you 1 cup at the same time every day, your body adapts to the caffeine and it becomes less effective. So try avoid drinking caffeine unless you're really tired and you really need it. The effects of caffeine last up to 6 hours. It takes about 20 minutes to take effect. You need to be careful, though, that you don't develop a dependence or a tolerance. Your body quickly builds up a tolerance to caffeine. The more regularly you use it, the more it will take to keep you alert when you really need help. You can also develop dependence to caffeine, so many people will actually develop withdrawal symptoms from caffeine if they try to go without. Remember that stimulants only hide or postpone the effects of fatigue. They do not replace the need for sleep. Eating right can also play a role in your fatigue management strategies. So you got to be careful about what you eat. Maintaining blood sugar levels is key to controlling ups and downs in energy. The way blood sugar levels react to food is known as the glycemic index. For example, snack bars or sugary foods can give you a rush of energy, known as a sugar high, but that's usually followed by a low that makes you feel tired again. Foods like potatoes, pizza, and white bread have a high glycemic or sugar index and can also make you feel sluggish. So for example, eating a tuna sandwich on brown bread will keep you going longer without getting tired. Tuna packed in water is high protein, low fat, and brown bread has a lower glycemic index than white bread. Physical exercise can help with your fatigue, so it's good for your overall health. Regular exercise helps you sleep well, stay healthy, and feel fit. It may not be easy to find a regular time to exercise if your work schedule keeps changing, but you don't need to join a gym or a local sports team to enjoy the benefits of exercise. You just got to find something you enjoy doing that gets your heart rate going. Any activity to get your heart rate elevated for at least 20 minutes is good, whether that be hiking, playing pickleball, basketball, or even just walking in the park. Another fatigue mitigation strategy is known as restorative breaks. So performance can decline when spending long times on one task. A restorative break are periodic times where one person or pilot disengages from the task at hand. Restorative breaks should be taken about every hour. They can include things like in-seat stretching, or more active breaks can be as simple as standing and stretching. So this concludes our presentation on fatigue risk management. I appreciate your attention, and hopefully these strategies come in handy down the road. The following are just useful appendices and charts. So this appendix here gives a simple interpretation of combining daily recommended maximum duty periods with minimum rest periods. These are simple calculations that should be only used as guidelines, as well as the other charts to come.